He is a best-selling author on the subject of creating change through his books, blogs, Chicken Soup for the Soul, stories, as well as being quoted in over 20 books. I like that, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Dwight is a lifelong resident of Orlando, where he lives with his wife of 30 years. His purpose is to help leaders and organizations in rewriting their story through strategic change. So help me now welcome our speaker today, Mr. Dwight Bain.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Good morning. I'm so eager to be here again and to be able to tell you that in this particular session, the media are not your enemy. Now, I don't know how you line up in terms of maybe you like one channel over the other channel, but I'd like you to turn to somebody next to you and just say, the media is not your enemy. Just give that a try. Just give that a try. Because what I learned in 5 of the worst days in the history of Orlando, I want to share with you this morning. You see, I grew up in Orlando. I love Orlando. How many of you have been to Orlando? Just raise your hand, right? And how many of you were mad that I was in line in front of you at Space Mountain? I mean, just keep your hands up. Yeah. Everybody loves Orlando. Orlando is the happiest place on earth. I grew up there. In fact, I love the theme park Disney so much, and my parents loved it so much that we actually lived there for 6 months. They got a camper when Disney first opened, and they said, we just love this place. And so I went to the Magic Kingdom every day when I was in 8th grade. Just got on the boat, rode across. I love Orlando. Happy place, family friendly, a wonderful place where nothing bad ever happens until 5 days in 2016, and all that went away. It started on June 10, 2016. Christina Grimmie was a finalist on NBC television shows The Voice. She didn't win, but she had started a pop star career. And she was at a small concert at a small venue in a family neighborhood for moms and grandmas and daughters. There was about 200 people there. And what nobody knew is that in the back of that small theater was a young man named Kevin Lobney, who was 27 years old. And he had idolized her, and he was an obsessed fan. And he came with one purpose and 2 Glock 9mm handguns. And it was to be able to meet her. He paid the extra $50 to meet her backstage, waited in line after all the moms and the grandmas and the little girls, pulled out a 9mm, shot her twice, and then turned the weapon on himself. Murder-suicide. It's just a Friday night in Orlando. This doesn't happen. The next day, that's a Friday night, the next day, Saturday night at prayer vigils, because this doesn't happen in my town. We didn't know it was about to get worse. A lot worse. Because a few hours after the prayer vigil, in fact, at 2:12 a.m., on June the 12th, 2016, Omar Mateen, a security guard who'd bounced from job to job to job, who had sworn allegiance to ISIS, on June the 11th had one goal: I'm going to Walt Disney World, I'm going to kill 1,000 people. He had the assault weapons. I've seen the surveillance video. He went to the shopping area called Disney Springs with a baby stroller, all of his assault weapons in the baby stroller. Disney security, our Orange County Sheriff's Office, too tight a perimeter. We have the video footage of him walking around pushing his baby stroller and him agitated and angry. And this is about 10 o'clock on Saturday night. He leaves Disney property at 10:30 p.m., drives around looking for a secondary target, and he picks the Pulse nightclub, an LGBTQ nightclub, on Latino night. He finds a soft target. He walks in, and none of us were prepared. The entire country was not prepared for, at the time, the largest mass shooting in the history of the United States. 49 people would be murdered in a matter of just minutes. 53 critically injured. 9 held hostage for hours as our SWAT team surrounded Omar Mateen. Eventually, he died at the hands of SWAT as they rescued the 9 hostages. But the next morning, we woke up from bad murder-suicide to worse. Mass shooting, a terrorist attack targeted toward the Latino community and the LGBTQ community. The FBI said this is an act of terrorism. Our community is in shock. 49 people murdered for just being at a really simple club in a really nice residential neighborhood. My daughter works for the Walt Disney Company. She'd been there many times for birthday parties. It's just not a place where you think anything like this could happen. President Obama that night said this is happening too frequently. But we didn't know it was about to get a lot worse. But something interesting happened the next morning. The next morning, we started to communicate. We started to connect. And as we did that, some interesting things happened because police started working with fire, working with medical, working with EMT, working with mental health, working with faith community, education, the business community. We started to become Orlando United. You'll see in the slide, there were press conferences going on. Every major form of media was there. And that's when I started to see media is not the enemy. They have a story to tell. And the interesting thing that happened, I was talking with Jeff about this a few minutes ago, is that we were able to take a message, the message that you and I've learned here at the foundation, a mental health message to help our community heal. At the prayer vigil, this is on Monday night, the photograph that you see, I learned that community crisis can create community connection. Say that with me. Community crisis can create community connection. Un más tiempo. One more time. Community crisis can create community connection. When we're able to work in partnership, what we didn't know, it was about to get a lot worse. See, the happiest place on earth, a company that I love, a place that my family goes frequently, had the unusual incident. Remember, this is the next day. A little boy named Lane Graves, 2 years old, playing on the beach, building sand castles at the Grand Floridian Resort Hotel, Disney's nicest property. He's building sand castles right at dusk. If you grew up in the South, you know that right at dusk is when gators start to feed. And an 8-foot female alligator saw him on the beach. And alligators are incredible reptiles because they're very incredibly quiet until they strike, and they strike with lightning speed. And this little boy, 2 years old, was taken in an instant. The alligator snatched him by his head, pulled him into the water with the dad who was standing nearby, who'd been a college wrestler, pounding on the alligator, and the baby boy is gone. Another critical incident. You'll see the age in the face of our sheriff, Jerry Demings. The next day when our Orange County Sheriff's Office divers found the body. 5 days, 3 critical incidents. How does this happen in Orlando? Crisis happens when you least expect it. That's why we come here. That's why we prepare. That's why we get involved in training and equipping and getting ready, because you never know when there's going to be a murder-suicide at a family concert. You don't know when the next mass shooting is going to happen, but in the United States, where I'm from, it happens a lot, more than it ever has. You don't know when there's going to be a wild animal attack, and certainly at a theme park. 3 critical incidents, 5 days. Here's what I saw. What I saw is we need a mental health message. That's my background, mental health. Even though I've partnered with the Orange County Sheriff's Office for decades as a trainer on their original CISD team, that we called it back then, CISM team now. A mental health message to bring hope and peace and recovery, post-traumatic growth, as John just talked about. Growth on the other side of the stress and the trauma. Because there's 2 different types of a critical incident. On a personal level, a car accident, something happens in front of you, right? But on a community level, that's what we were experiencing. You'll see on the slide it says hashtag Orlando United. And my kids tell me, Dad, if you were cool, you wouldn't have to do hashtag because it doesn't look right when somebody that old says hashtag. If you don't know what a hashtag is, it's a little number sign. And if you have to ask, you're not cool enough to ask, so don't ask, right? I've learned in 35 years of working clinically in mental health, I've learned you're either in a crisis, you just got out of a crisis, or buckle up. You're about to go back into a crisis. That's the work that we do. That's why we're here. That's why we believe in partnering and helping each other. But we became Orlando United because Orlando had grown very quickly, and it wasn't always united. And watch what happened. We had multiplying factors. A multiplying factor is anything that affects kids. We had that. A multiplying factor is human responsibility. We had an act of terrorism, the FBI said. No warning. 3 critical incidents, 5 days. Multiple casualties. There were 49 bodies when our Orange County Sheriff's Office and Orlando police officers went in, and they heard this. 49 bodies had to be tagged, identified, and cell phones were going off of people calling in the complete silence. And our first responders are there with these phones going off again and again and again. What most people don't realize is that when our SWAT team broke in to kill Omar Mateen, who had holed up and was holding these hostages, a water pipe was broken. So these 49 bodies were laying in inches of bloody water, their own blood. There were a lot of multiplying factors that made this critical incident, these 3 and 5 days, worse. But something interesting happened. This is Ryan Galick. He was a firefighter that night. Today, he's an author of a book called Silent Mayday. In Silent Mayday, he's written about post-traumatic growth and recovery. Today, he's a critical incident specialist working with the media and some of the largest corporations in the country. I learned that in a media partnership, both sides work together because the media is not your enemy. Both sides work together to be able to share a story. Let me give you 7 strategies I learned in those 5 days. Number 1, research. What does the community need to hear? What do they need to hear to heal? And if you say, well, how will I learn this? Oh, it's simple. Yeah, you need to write it down because there's a study guide that goes with the presentation. I hope you get the study guide because I put a lot more in the study guide than I could share with you today about strategies for you to connect with the media. But you can get, what does the community need to hear? You write down ICISF.org. ICISF.org. And you'll find this wonderful list of signs and symptoms after a critical incident. You say, well, I knew that. Yeah, I just want you to be able to share it with radio, television, web, print, magazines. See, I want you to become the expert. I want you to rethink your entire approach. Rethinking your approach means that instead of thinking, well, we're in our silo, we're in our little group, and this is what we do, I want you to rethink partnership. So that police partners with fire, partners with medical, partners with mental health, partners with the faith community, partners with education and business. Because I saw that happen in Orlando, where everybody started working together. Because instead of having this terrible situation, we had 3 in 5 days, and now everybody's working together to make it better. Here's how we do it. You match the needs of the community to your expertise equals community stability. You can help people I could never help. Karen, you can help people I could never help. We've been friends for a long time. You can help people in your circle that would never meet me. Each of us can take this message into different parts of the world, and I want you to become the expert in partnering with the media. The next principle is to respect the media's job. They have a story to tell. And sometimes they get it wrong. Their job is to present both sides. That's not easy. They're up against unbelievable deadlines. I want you to be able to respect that. I want you to reach out and build some media relationships. If you have the study guide, I've given you the links to ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, MSNBC, so that you can start to build relationships with these journalists, with these reporters, so that when the critical incident happens in your zip code, in your part of the world, they call you. There's going to be a critical incident tomorrow. I don't know where, I don't know which zip code, but I know this. If you're connected to the media in your part of the world, and they call you, and we've given you a positive message of post-traumatic growth, resiliency, recovery, now all of a sudden you're part of the solution of bringing a community together and creating community healing. I want you to represent your agency and your organization. You know your core values, and sometimes people say, well, I'd be nervous, I'd be afraid to be on radio or television or interviewed. Those people hate us. After a crisis, I didn't see that. I saw everybody being stunned. What do we do to help? And when you're able to represent your agency, the doctors that you see, many of them had been doing surgery for 10, 20, 30 hours to try to save the lives of the 53 who were shot and survived. Some shot with an assault weapon 10, 12 times. They saved 53 lives. They represented their agency, because when you're talking about what you believe, your core beliefs, your agency core beliefs, you don't get nervous when you're talking about what you believe. And we all believe in PTG, post-traumatic growth. We're moving an entire culture from PTSD, everybody talks about it. We're moving them over to PTG, post-traumatic growth. The next principle is rehearse like a professional. That's Greg Warmoth you see on the screen. Central Florida's most respected newsman. He was everywhere. And he taught me something. Professionals practice every day. A friend of mine is a business writer. His name is John Maxwell. And John wrote a book on how to connect to a group of 6, a group of 60, a group of 600. It's a book called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. John's the #1 leadership expert in the world. I hope you'll check it out. Everybody communicates, few connect. Because when you are able to rehearse a core message, I learned that crisis brings out the worst in people, but crisis brings out the best in people. I learned if you talk through it, you can get through it. In media, that's called sound bites of information, 5 to 10 seconds to help people. And here was the bottom line. You see, we were able to move people from information to application. Information is theory. It's like reading things in a textbook. It's like, those are pretty good ideas. Application gets people's feet moving in the right direction. And you see the picture a friend of mine took. People waited in line, some up to 10 hours, to donate blood, to be able to help those that were in surgery. People came from our entire community, because we moved from information about helping people in crisis, we moved them over to application. Application is to put it into practice. Well, how do we do that? Media is very powerful. If we can give them the message of post-traumatic growth, resilience, and recovery, then now, all of a sudden, we're ready. I don't know which critical incident will happen tomorrow, but I know there will be one. And I know this, if we can get you ready with a message of healing, resilience, recovery, and hope, and we get you ready, then if there's a murder-suicide at a family concert, you're ready with a message of hope and healing. If there's a mass shooting in your zip code, you're able to have a message of hope and healing. If there's a wild animal attack, you'll know what to do and what to say. See, there's going to be a crisis tomorrow. There's going to be a crisis tomorrow. I don't know where it's going to be, but I know this. They're going to need a message of hope, and I also know they're going to need a messenger. And I believe the messenger is you. We took the principles that I learned right here at ICISF, and after 3 critical incidents in 5 days, we became Orlando United. No longer divided by crisis, we were Orlando United in hope and healing and recovery, because we learned the principles, and I learned them right here with you. 20 years ago, after the terrorist attacks, I had an opportunity to meet Jeff, Mitchell, George, and an organization I'd never heard of. And you all gave me hope and healing that I took back to Orlando. Thank you very much.